Hi, good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. This is a regular session of council this evening. Today is June 5th, 2017. We will begin the meeting this evening with a public hearing regarding NOPEC, the Plan of Operation and Governance for the Aggregation of Competitive Retail Natural Gas. We do have the public hearing, and I believe that Councilmember President Nisley, who is our acting mayor this evening, will also be able to address this briefly.
Just to provide a little bit of background about why we're having the public hearing, City Council did a number of years ago pass an ordinance approving gas aggregation, and it had not moved forward with an opportunity with that. But we have, this past spring, had several presentations, one of which from Mr. Kiefer from NOPEC, the Northeast Ohio group, and then Mr. Eddie Smith from SOPEC also providing council information about the gas aggregation process. And so what we're having tonight are the first of two public hearings to allow an opportunity for any citizens or council members to ask any questions. And then at tonight's business meeting, when we commence, we will have the first reading of an ordinance that establishes SOPEC to act as the agent for the city of Athens in this gas aggregation agreement. Then later on in the process, we will have another ordinance this summer and perhaps extending over into August, where we will be looking at approving the operations and governance for this gas aggregation system. Just to explain a little bit more of the process after those, if those ordinances are approved, then after that, citizens will be notified in writing, and it will be much like our electric aggregation, where an opt-out notice will be sent. So unless you specifically opt out, citizens will be included in the residential gas aggregation. And then if this all works according to our timing and things move along well, then we should have gas flowing to customers by October, with our intent to hopefully save all of our residential customers in the city some money on their gas prices.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So having said that, are there any questions or comments from the audience or council members? Wonderful. It does not appear. We do have a sign-in sheet, so please, all audience members, make sure that you do sign in this evening to acknowledge that you were present and participate in the public hearing. If there are no other comments, then we will proceed with our regular session of council. We do have a quorum this evening. As noted, I will be acting President Pro Tem. Our mayor is not present this evening, so our President Nisley is now acting mayor. We do have a quorum, all members present. Moving to the second part of the agenda, disposition of minutes. We have regular session held May 15th and special session held May 22nd. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The minutes have been adopted. Moving on to communications. Are there any communications from council members? Yes, Councilmember Fall.
Last week we were in receipt of a very happy news about a lawsuit that Athens had joined regarding micro wireless amendments to the chapter in the ORC that basically took away our home rule about where to place them, who maintain them, and various other issues with home rule. Franklin County Court of Common Pleas found that it was taken to court by over 50 communities based on home rule, that the one subject rule that is found in the Constitution of Ohio was, they didn't pay attention to it. And so that the judge said that it was unconstitutional. He also held, even though that the lawsuit specifically wasn't about other issues in this lame duck Christmas tree legislation that went through, that also some of the other because they were hung into something that was not related in a subject, such as the minimum wage provisions, which took away the home rule of people being able to, cities being able to to regulate minimum wage and sick leave policies for their city. And so we have won, and this is a big win for the home rule. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fall. Other communications. Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I wanted to, I've gotten several communications, as has some other council members, regarding the pool. We are doing a reading this evening to move forward with the pool consultants and accepting bids. And there was a clarification in an email from the MSA consultants in the lap diving pool at the shallowest end, that's 4 feet. And then the deepest end is 7 feet. And I just wanted the community to know that. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say, but that's what our MSA consultants verified with us. Anything less than that, I think, will be a major disappointment to those lap swimmers who do flip turns and that kind of thing. And, you know, many of those people were also the ones who wanted the indoor pool. So I'm hoping that this is an accurate statement. The one other thing I want to mention is there does seem to be some concern in the community regarding the quote-unquote recreation pool, and that the deepest that pool is 3.3 feet, 6 inches, 3.5 feet. And there's some concerns because that's almost like a kiddie pool. So I think I don't know how much this was discussed with the consultants, but we may need some clarification on that and even some further discussion on the quote-unquote recreation pool. So I just wanted to put that out there so that the people who are listening as well understand that that seems to be an accurate 4 feet to 7 feet in the lap pool.
If I may.
Yes, thank you.
We had communications with Keith Hall of MSA on Friday as we were returning from the conference, and 4'6" is what he said will be the standard at the low end, and then it becomes 7 feet.
Okay, so that's even better for
Yes, it is.
competitive purposes.
He said that's more of the standard.
That is.
So that is.
4.6 to 7 feet. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's important. We know we have some media here as well. And then, was there a question asked about the recreation pool?
I am trying to envision the design.
It's the smaller, I don't know if Scott or if anyone else is able to.
It's called a
bring up the
leisure pool. A
Is it possible to
leisure
bring up the
pool.
pool image on the
It's
screen?
and the zero depth.
Ryan?
Zero depth
Okay,
pool.
thank you. So
Right.
if everyone's patient with us briefly here, we'll
Okay.
get an image up on the TV and audience members.
Also in that anonymous listing, where is Connor? Someone mentioned something about the trees. As you've heard Keith Hall, we are saving the trees to the best of our ability. We recognize those trees. He's got a landscape architect that, finds them near and dear to maintain, so.
Thank you. And yes.
I was just going to
acting-
say, if
Acting Mayor
they
Isley.
can't call up the image tonight, then we do have committee meeting next week.
Correct, and we can bring it up again for discussion.
So that's called the leisure pool, and it's the zero entry pool. So
And you do have a copy of that in your 522, your Google Drives.
Mm-hmm.
Your 522 presentation from MSA would just show the design on that.
I know
Thank
that
you.
member Reisner is looking at that now. I don't know if it says what the depth is, but there
We're
was.
talking the main activity pool. This is zero entry to 3 feet 6 inches depth, 4,000 plus or minus square feet.
Well, moving on along communications, are there other communications from council members? Yes, Councilmember Katsas. We do have an image of the pool that was present briefly there.
Do you want to continue to talk about that, or should I?
No, go ahead and comment.
Okay,
Thank you.
I was in receipt of a message this week from a citizen who was threatened with her son while they were riding their bicycle on the east side of town. And I just wanted to say, I know that all the new traffic patterns that we are creating to get around town, I know that they're a little bit confusing and a little frustrating at times, but I would love it if we can practice respect on the road to all users. And also, I'm sent a message out to Chief Pyle to kind of learn about exactly what one citizen should do in a situation like that. The other thing I have, which is kind of in a similar vein, was these showed up in front of our desk last week. Oh, look at that! You can actually see that pretty well. Oh, there you go. So, Your Move, Ohio. This is something that's actually been rolled out just this year. There was a test pilot of just 4 cities across the state, Nelsonville being one of them. And so this is a PSA from the Department of Health, Ohio Department of Health, and ODOT about cycling, driving, bicycling, busing, walking. It's all kind of active transportation. And this talking piece has a lot of just helpful tips for everybody of how to work better within all of our systems. And along the same vein, I have been drafted to attend the Ohio Action Institute up in Columbus. It actually starts tomorrow, and once again, this is also being a joint effort from the Ohio Department of Health and Transportation, and it's a 3-day seminar that is going to focus on active transportation, and this was all made possible by the Athens City County Health Department, who wrote a grant and was able to get 6 people from the community, from the county, to attend this. So I'm very excited to. I'm not excited to spend 3 days in Columbus, but I am excited to spend 3 days learning this stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Katsas. Are there other communications from council members? Yes, Councilmember McGee.
Thank you. I've had 2 communications. One is concerning the pool, and I was just looking at the photograph of the pool. It's my understanding on the competition pool, which is the laps pool, that I believe there were 7 lanes proposed, and part of the discussion concerned the fact that those lanes could possibly be sectioned off to provide more leisure swimming in that area. I was concerned at the last meeting that it was too shallow. I'm very pleased to hear that the one end will be 7 feet. I'm a little concerned about how that measures out. It's because I think one of the things citizens had expressed was a desire to go from the diving well area into the lap pool area, and I hope what they're talking about when they mention the 7 feet depth would be the very end, and I'd like to know how that would be decreasing to the 4-foot level. So if that could be provided to the citizens, I think that's important. The other thing I would just like to mention, I've had some citizens who are quite concerned about the traffic patterns and the hassle to citizens who are driving. And although I agree with Pete that it's nice that everyone practice courtesy to all drivers, I think it's something that council needs to be aware that we're imposing quite a bit of a hardship on some of the people in Athens who are driving, and hopefully this will be taken care of as soon as possible by the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council members regarding communications? If not, we'll move on to reports and communications from other elected officials. We'll begin with Acting Mayor Nisley.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say to thank our Service Safety Director, Paula Horan-Mosley, and the Mayor, who have been at the International Town Gown Association meeting last week. And we always come back with good ideas from there, so we'll be looking forward to hearing more about that when they're both back. I did want to mention our software program that's available for download on iPhones, and it's something that our government channel crew, Scott Thompson and others, have worked a lot to begin this, and it's called City Source, and it is a wonderful tool for being able to report when there are potholes around the street or on our streets, or if there might be trees that perhaps citizens think might be in the right-of-way, if we're having problems with the ash trees. But I would like to reference back to Councilmember Katsas's comment about the incident that happened on Morris Avenue this past weekend, because there are some occasions when it's probably more appropriate to phone the city immediately. And so when there are items where you think somebody might be, or a situation where you think somebody might be in danger, or what I guess the police department would call an actionable item, if somebody is potentially creating harm to someone else, then that's the time to phone the police and to gather, as you were saying, Councilmember Katsas, what's the information that the police need to have? So in that situation with a car, a make and model number and a license plate. And I realize that's sometimes tough to do, but, in those situations. The other thing is if there's a water line break that you're aware of, getting it to City Source will get it into the system, yes, but it's not going to alert a staff person. We have in our city phone book, we have call-out phone numbers that can be used 24 hours a day. So that's the kind of thing, if you think there's a water line or a sewage backup, call us immediately, and then city staff can take action when they know. So those are my items for communication.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This evening we also have Auditor Hecht present. Any communications or reports?
No report.
Thank you, Auditor. Law Director Lisa Liason.
No report.
Okay, thank you. We also have present Treasurer Marianne McClure, and I believe she might have a quarterly report for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I've handed out to all of you and a couple of other folks. This is the first quarter interest income report for 2017. Our total accumulated interest at 3/31/17 was $145,231.42. We have already had the one CD that is maturing this year. If you look in the March column, the third figure, you can see that amount. And but looking at the rate that we're going, we should not have any trouble meeting the projected amount, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of the first page of the interest income. Any questions?
Any questions for the Treasurer?
I have a question.
You got Councilmember Reisner.
So it looks like we're in the black.
Yes, as far as interest income, yes. And we are getting some additional interest from the pool bond funds that are not being utilized yet. So that's a little bit of a help this year.
That's good. Is most of our investments local, or do we have things that are statewide, out of state?
The CDs are local. I do. There is some money invested in the Star Plus Ohio in the state, and we're also using a Ohio broker to invest in some Treasury bonds for us.
I just think it's important that if we have local funds coming in from local tax revenues, they should be at least invested
We
as
do
much
have
as possible locally.
we do have most of our money in the three major banks in the area.
Right. That's good. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer. If there's no other questions, thank you. We'll now be moving on to ordinances for third reading this evening. The first ordinance is Ordinance 6417. This is an ordinance authorizing the Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council, SOPEC, as agent for the city to enter into a natural gas program agreement with the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC. Introduced by all council members. Who will be speaking this evening on this behalf? Which council member had been?
I guess I will.
Sure, thank you. Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We've been discussing this for a while, and we had voted on it quite a bit ago under Mayor Paul Weil. And so this is to enter into a natural gas program agreement. We have somebody from SOPEC who can answer any of the more kind of logistical and technical questions. I move that we adopt 6417. I think one thing that should be pointed out is that this idea of aggregation has worked out really well for the city of Athens. We aggregated our electrical bills, and right now, because of the ability and the combined strength of having so many communities go together and be able to negotiate contracts and look out for the people in a combined manner, in a cooperative manner, I think it's much better than, personally, what I think is that it gives us much more clout when going forward to the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, and lobbying, because it gives us many more voices. I like to point out that 100% of our electrical, from what I've heard from the mayor, from our electrical purchasing is 100% renewable, because we can go out and find contracts. And it's kind of ironic that a lot of that renewable energy is from Texas, from wind energy. So, you know, they've gone and have gone to the future. Even though they're a big oil and gas state, they know that they have a huge amount of wind. So I think that this is a great thing for Athens, because we can use the clout to do the same possibly in the future. Would you like to come up and say anything, Mr.
Sure.
Smith?
So present is Executive Director of SOPAC, Eddie Smith. Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me. Yeah, we're just thrilled to have Athens City again taking a leadership role with some of our aggregation programming. We recently conducted the mercantile auction process. Athens City and Athens County were the only two participants in that program when it first started. This year we were able to extend that to 10 local governments, many local villages in Southeast Ohio who are now benefiting because of the city's role as a leader with this sort of collaborative, cooperative aggregation programming that we're launching. So I think the next big step is to step into natural gas and to do the same thing there. So
We have some questions from council.
Mr. Smith, do you know how many electric customers, residential in the city, are actually a part of the aggregation with the electric? Do you know the percentage? I'm just wondering.
I believe the actual number is around 8,000.
Okay, so 8,000, but we don't know residential customers, what percentage that is. I don't know.
We could draft an eligible customer list. It would show the total pool of electric customers with the utility, and then out of that, we could determine who's actually in the program. But
Okay.
that's not something that we
So
currently
right now
track.
it's 8,000.
I think it's right around 8,000.
And then my second question, just for our viewing audience as well, this is like electric aggregation, and you have to opt out, correct?
Yes, this
For gas.
creates a new default offer.
Okay.
Whether anyone realizes it or not, they already have a default offer that comes from the utility, and this is just going to provide a better default offer than what you get with the utility. So you could opt out and go back to the higher price with the utility if you wanted to, but it's just a better default rate for people who probably don't want to have to look into this.
And with electric, my third question, with electric, we can look at a renewable source, but with gas, we're not in that, there's no way to do that. Is that correct?
We asked Nextera to look at every gas source countrywide to find some type of renewable gas product that could be put into a pipeline somewhere, and that we could pay a bit of a premium to for that renewable gas coming into the system. Whether or not the molecules were being used here, we wanted to do our part to help pay for that if it was, being put into the system. And they looked nationwide for biogas facilities, methane digester plants, every possible source they could find for renewable gas production, but nothing is currently being offloaded into a gas pipeline. So that is something we're trying to find a way to do, but right now the best option we have is this NextEra grant program that's going to create renewable generation assets, in association with the amount of gas that we're purchasing through NextEra.
Right.
Thank you for that.
And one of the processes through this coalition is that there'll be public information. The public will receive letters talking about what is going on and their options under this program. So, any other questions?
I think the other major point at this point before we vote is that our mayor, the City of Athens mayor, will sit on, I don't know if you call it a governing board or what you call the board, but so we will have a voice at another level as well.
Yes, there were some democratic issues that I think were voiced about a year ago, and I think those were legitimate because Athens City is one of many governments in SOPEC, and SOPEC's one of 200 government entities in NOPEC. And so the voice of Athens would be quite small in NOPEC, despite what a large customer they would be. So NOPEC fixed that. They passed a resolution that would give Athens a direct seat on their board of directors, which is only 15. There's only 15 directors there. So yes, Mayor Steve Patterson would have a direct seat on the NOPEC board.
Thank you.
So I appreciate the leadership that SOPAC has taken. I think this is, given everything that has gone on in the last week, empowering for people who live in this area to be able to, take ownership of their energy uses. So, okay. Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fall, and thank you, Executive Director Smith.
Thank you all.
So we do have a motion and a second for Ordinance 6417. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to Ordinance 6517, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to submit an application and enter into a water supply revolving loan account agreement and designated a dedicated repayment source for the loan, introduced by Councilmember Butler. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. As you recall, we discussed this ordinance in committee as well as this being the third reading. Quite simply, it's authorizing the City Service Safety Director to submit an application into the Water Supply Revolving Loan Account, the WSRLA, which is an agreement with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and the Ohio Water Development Authority, the OWDA, for construction of the water treatment plant improvements. Some of the improvement projects that can be added, which engineer Jessica Dine was able to acknowledge to us via email, was that we can include solar panels in the project as well to enhance the needs that are down there. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
We do have a little bit of explanation from our Public Works Director, Andy Stone, on the process of this, just
Thank
so
you.
we're understanding where we're going in the next few months with this. So this is the first phase one of that loan application. And then we'll be, later on this summer, on June 19th, then we'll be having, requesting grant authorization to advertise and accept bids for the construction, for the improvements to the water treatment plant. And then we'll have a resolution that we'll need to pass in September. That will be a resolution of tentative award for the construction contract. And that's a one reading resolution. And then I think that will be it. And then we have a loan application that's due on October 1. So going through this process, oh, I'm sorry, we have another step in here, Paula's telling me. Yes, okay, so this, we then need to appropriation and authorization for the expenditure of the construction loan amount. And that legislation would be introduced on September 11th and passed on September 8th, would need to be passed on September 18th. And then the entire loan application is due on October 1. So being able to follow this timeline and getting all the ordinances necessary will save us a considerable amount of money being able to go through this loan application process. I think the estimate is it'll save us over $800,000 over the life of the loan by using this program.
Thank you. And thanks to the city administration for helping explain and offer more detail there.
And you have the full text of that in your Google Drive. It arrived just prior to the meeting, but it's there for your reference, and it's a really good description of the process. Breaks it down.
And that's from Public Works Director Stone? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council members or the audience? Okay, we do have a motion to adopt the ordinance and a second. All those in favor of adopting ordinance 6517, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to ordinance 6617, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to acquire right-of-way, to advertise and accept bids where necessary, and enter into contracts for construction, engineering services, and right-of-way acquisition services for the West Union Street Sidewalk Extension Project number 309, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. President, I move to adopt 6617.
Second.
And as a reminder to folks, this is an extension, this is building a sidewalk where one does not exist on West Union Street. Just to round out the funding process here, $127,500 is going to be expended, $52,500 from Street Fund 220, $60,000 from a CDBG Fund 248, 352, it's a different pot of money, 555235, and then $15,000 from CDBG Fund 248, 352, 532 for the extension.
Thank you, Councilmember Pappy. Are there any questions or comments regarding ordinance 6617 from council members or the public? Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you. I would just comment this is a much needed sidewalk. I just took a look at the Google Earth maps and you can see that there is a pattern of usage there. Folks are already using this as a natural walkway, so it's a natural place for us to put a sidewalk to increase active transportation in that area of the city.
Now, I would just add one other thing. There's some recent housing that's been added in that area, special needs housing. So again, the fact that we need a sidewalk down there is really important.
Agreed. Any other comments? We do have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 6617. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. We're now moving on to ordinance 6717, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contracts for construction and engineering services for the East State Street US 33 project number 288 and authorizing the auditor to make an interfund transfer. This too is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 6717.
Second.
And this is a rather complicated ordinance in terms of all the transfers and the monies moving along. This is totals, I think, if I have it correct, our total for the entire project is $6,252,800. 797 from Street Rehab Fund 572, 400,000 from State Issue 1 Fund 590, $4,962,800 from Small Cities ODOT Grant Fund 589, $93,000 from Permissive Wheel Tax Fund 226, and there's also TIF funding involved in this. So, bottom line, it's a very large project. And I know we've had some conversations and some controversy over the engineering and what will be located there. There's been a lot of conversations with community groups and back and forth. And I know there continue to be people who are concerned with safety measures, and I know that many of us on council have urged administration to continue with our online presence on our website in terms of further education as we move through this process. Member Costas brought up bicycle safety tonight, driving safety, all of those kind of things. I think the community will continue to need to push on our educational efforts in those areas. And so it's a process, and we begin.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Fall.
First of all, I'd like to commend Andy Stone. He has been a gem for the city in being able to explain and answer citizens' questions about what is going on. I also think that some people say, well, it's too new or too different. And I would just like to say that this idea of Lane becoming skinny has been put into thousands of different places. And so I think that Athens is actually playing catch up. I don't like Athens playing catch up. We are a leadership city, and we need to provide that leadership for transportation and for other things that will help enhance our sustainability. And so I commend that we go forward with this, and quite pleased that we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Katsas.
Thank you. You know, and I know that a lot of people are afraid of this design. Not a lot, but there are some people, and I would say at this point that the current situation, the current design of that street, it can be made safer, and that's what the city is doing with this project. So, you know, I heard a statistic here recently where 1 in 200 drivers in the United States will kill somebody with their vehicle in their lifetime. And those numbers need to come down. Driving and just getting around is the most dangerous thing that we do on a day-to-day basis. And I understand that people think that this is going to increase the danger, but it's been proven time and time and again. In fact, these projects, I've seen some as old as 15, 16 years old that have been measured and tracked, and they're successful. So I expect that we're not so special that this is going to be any different than those projects. So I look forward to the changes and what the future brings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Katsas. Any other questions or comments?
I would just add one other thing
Sure,
again. Our
Councilmember Pat.
PSA efforts are really important, and that's an administrative task. And what we put out to the public in terms of safety, what the media writes, whatever, I think is really important around, not just during this construction season, but as we move forward.
Thank you. I too briefly want to express support for this ordinance and moving forward, but we'll acknowledge as well too that we received many concerns and issues. I applaud those that had the courage to approach council and the administration to share their concerns and fears and worries, because I do not reside on that part of town, so I'm not as familiar with the challenges that exist with the daily commute in and out of the neighborhoods there. So I do appreciate people's concerns and acknowledge that those are real for some people. I do think the administration has done a tremendous job trying to listen and hear those and be mindful of those as we proceed and move forward. On a second note, I will acknowledge that I was just recently visiting New York City and was completely surprised and delighted at the number of bicycle lanes and efforts that one of the biggest cities in our country has made to move forward, embracing complete streets and bicycle safety and pedestrian safety. So I feel that if a city with their population can make it happen and support it, I believe that we too as well can. Again, it's going to take communication and efforts, but again, I want to express support for this and feel that we're going to do well moving forward. Any other questions or comments from council or the public? Administration? Yes, President Nisley.
The administration's excited too. It's a wonderful project, and just want to thank council for their assistance in helping move us forward and helping have those conversations in the neighborhood. I think there's an opportunity for other partnerships too. We've reached out, I think are in the process of reaching out to Ohio University to work to educate students, especially incoming freshmen, also international students, about some of the new, what will be new features on East State Street, new traffic patterns for us all. And I probably need to do a little bit of homework myself to find out if in some of those other cities there are ways that the cities have worked with the businesses, because we do have a number of businesses who have entrances, who have semi-trucks coming in on a daily basis, all 24 hours a day. And so we need to be cognizant of that. I think that those are big vehicles moving along in smaller lanes, and could probably do some kind of partnership or even PSAs to those businesses.
Thank you.
And this project will run until next year. And the idea is we're hopeful that we can get it repaved and the new striping in place and sidewalk construction this year.
Thank you. Thank you, City Service Safety Director. So we do have a motion to adopt this ordinance and a second. If there are no further comments, all those in favor of adopting ordinance 6717, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 70-17, an ordinance authorizing the lease of property not currently needed for a municipal purpose, and this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we can adopt 7017.
Second.
This is about the sexy subject of sludge. And this particular piece of property, 14 acres, is no longer needed for sludge disposal, partly because so much sludge has been put on it, it won't pass EPA standards. And so since it's no longer useful for municipal purposes, this would move forward to allow the Service Safety Director to enter into sealed bids for a long-term lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fall. Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting ordinance 717, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to ordinances for second reading. We just have one. This is ordinance 69-17, an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Any questions or comments? We're now moving on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 71-17, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application for funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation, Jobs and Commerce through the Athens County Transportation Improvement District for the Central Athens Fiber Optic Network Project to execute contracts as required and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Cochran.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Butler. This is a pretty straightforward ordinance, basically authorizing a grant application. As was previously explained, we had covered this topic a couple weeks ago when the mayor spoke about that, and so we are authorizing him to submit an application for that program known as the KFON for Central Athens Fiber Optic Network Project, which would enable us to lay some length of fiber optic cable, which would enable future projects such as public Wi-Fi and business usage potentially. So I don't have a whole lot other than that as far as details. Maybe the administration can speak a little more to that.
We will have some recommendations from the Department of Public Works as to the funds from which this project could be paid for, because as noted, the grant application is for $50,000, but then we have a match of $150,000. And so we'll be having that, we can have those details for committee meeting. Committee meeting next Monday night.
Thank you.
I'm noticing on the website we do have several documents here explaining where they would like to connect it and what some costs are and whatnot. So there's quite a bit that you've shared with council at this point.
Thank you, Councilmember Pappy. Councilmember Reisner.
Yeah, I just want to say I really support this type of infrastructure project.
Yes.
This is the type of thing that I think Athens really needs to invest in. This is really where you start attracting more high-tech service type of companies in the town. And my only disappointment with it is it doesn't go the entire length of Richland Avenue. It just goes part way. But maybe in the future we can address that, because I'd like to see everybody on Richland being able to have access to high-speed fiber internet connections. And I really can't think of a good reason why not to do it.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember.
One of the largest problems that Southeast Ohio has in economic development is high-speed internet. And I think that this could act as a model. We would like to see infrastructure development of high-speed internet, which would be probably the #1 thing that could push economic development in the county, is the provision of high-speed internet. Somehow that doesn't seem to be being looked at by some entities up at the State House. So I think it's good that we do this so we can show that there's interest and that there's a model down here in Southeast Ohio. Other cities have done this across the nation. So once again, we're kind of playing catch up. And it's also putting saying we have home rule, because there has been rumblings about the state making it so that municipalities cannot do this sort of infrastructure development, and it would be completely up to corporations. So here's another opportunity to empower our population to be able to do our economic development. Thank you.
And there is a letter shared with council from the Athens County Economic Development Council on our drive here that basically says what you said and the need for this, and they enthusiastically support.
And for folks who have not seen the map, basically the area covered by this would be from the Armory, going up Court Street, and then continuing down a section of Richland Avenue to connect the Richland Avenue Fire Station. So those would be the two anchor points. And of course, there were questions last time about connecting other areas, and that might be part of a future project. But for this point, it's that corridor, which would be largely uptown Athens and extending out through one of our major commercial corridors.
I think the other important point to mention is when we redid Richland Avenue, we did put the access points in there. So it's all it is at this point is a matter of running the cables through there. I'm not sure in our uptown area how that's going to work, but in the new areas that were recently constructed, it's just a matter of running the cable.
And that's something that Andy Stone has been a leader on in the city. Making sure that we put conduit down and getting us ready for this new technology, which is really not so new. But
Not anymore.
we're doing it.
Thank you, council members. Are there other questions or comments? I appreciate everyone's comments too. I will acknowledge that I too agree that it's forward-thinking and supported. A quick Google search indicates that the United States doesn't even average in the top 10 of connection speeds. So we're a little behind. This could be an effort to assist us in moving forward, despite some of the technological advances. We're not quite as quick as we think. Any other questions or comments from the community? Moving forward, Ordinance 7217, an ordinance amending the 2017 appropriation ordinance. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem Butler. Let me read the ordinance to you. Section 1, the 2017 appropriation ordinance 015016 is hereby amended by decreasing the general fund police 101.207 TC 100 by $30,000 and increasing general fund police 101.207 TC 300 by same amount to cover polygraphs and officer training and decreasing and increasing the appropriations by said amount. So this is an ordinance that has direct impact with our police department and law enforcement. And therefore, I consider it a matter of public safety.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Moving on to ordinance 7317, an ordinance amending ordinance 151-16, the 2017 staffing levels in the police department and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. I'm guessing
Me.
Councilmember Reisner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem Butler. The ordinance 7317 is on everyone's disk drive. I won't read the whole thing because there's several entries here, but essentially ordinance 151-16 authorizing staffing levels in the police department is hereby amended to read as follows. Dropping down to the line where it says police lieutenant, the full-time equivalent is going to be changed from 6 to 5. And the next line where it says police patrol officer, which is now at 19, will be increased to 20. So there is no decrease in the staffing levels in our police department. It's going to remain constant. It's just simply a change in the job title, description, and position.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any questions or comments? Administration?
This is at the request of the police chief. A few years back, we put in a 6th lieutenant as we were experiencing some succession training and having that in place. And it's time now to revert back to 5 and increase the patrol officers to 20.
Thank you.
Or beat officers. Yeah.
Thank you. Comments from the public? Ordinance 7417, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contracts for construction and construction engineering services for the municipal pool, project number 292, introduced by Councilmember Butler. This has been anticipated and a project that's been in the making for a number of years. Even back to the Able administration, there were efforts to begin to look at the needs for replacement of, I believe, our 44-year-old pool. 44, 43?
43, we believe, this year.
Yeah, who's
Let's
counting?
not exaggerate.
And as acknowledged in the ordinance, in November of 2014, the electorate of the city of Athens approved an increase to the city income tax, which would help pay for construction of a swimming pool, among other things, enhancing our arts, parks, and recreation. We're looking at authorizing the City Service Safety Director to expend up to $7.1 million, and then also $500,000 for design and engineering. We did have a pretty lengthy discussion and presentation a few weeks back, and many of you also should have copies of cost estimates, which include demolition of existing pool and structures, new site clearing and grading, including some fill. Additionally, I believe that we will be saving a fair amount of money by keeping the pool on its current site rather than moving it to some of the other locations that were being considered. That should save thousands of dollars in keeping it at the current location. Other estimates involved here with the grand total include landscaping, concrete work, fencing, signage, some of the things that you don't normally think about when looking at what it costs to create and build a pool. Any questions or comments from council members? Yes, council member.
I'd like to just say that I was very pleased with the presentation that was given to council. However, I was distressed when the speaker indicated there may be a possibility that the splash pad section might not be available due to the funding, whereas some of the other options would go forward, such as, I suppose, their version of art or something to that effect. And I really want to emphasize my concern is that the practical use of the pool, the splash pads, a swimming area for not only the lap swimmers, but the other swimmers, especially the high school students or younger people who would be there. And I'm concerned, again, I would emphasize about the depth of the section of the pool that is the initial, the larger section. For it to be only 3 feet 6 inches seems something we should be concerned about. I understand we have to go forward with this, but it's something, again, I'd express concern.
Thank you. Yes, and I think those concerns need to be expressed, yes.
Member
indeed.
McGee, wasn't that clarified, though? Isn't it 4.6 to 7 feet?
The question is, where would it be in relation to where the people who are not swimming laps, when those areas are closed off, what section are we talking about? And I haven't seen the visual that really tells me what section that is. What I've seen is 7 laps or areas, and been told that an end will be 7 feet, but what area is going to be available for the non-lap swimmers when they cordon that off, and how deep will it be? That's my question, and it hasn't been answered.
Yes, Council, well, actually, we'll briefly offer administration a rebuttal. Briefly.
What had begun at the last one, we all went at 4 feet. So the lane closest to the general swimming area would be the 4.6. And the far lanes are the full depth, is my understanding. We'll get this clarified. I also wanted to say that it's 8 lap lanes.
Very good.
So with the idea that we can retract them so that the new swimmers, when, for example, Jennifer and I have been there over the weekend, and there were 3 or 4 people with that in the lap lanes. So there'll be times where, you know, the new swimmers will be able to get in there. And the splash pad is going to happen. That's not billed as an additive alternative. Some other added alternatives are going to be like the breezeway cover, similar to the entranceway over the maintenance or concession stand, the artistic features in the bottom of the splash pad. And this does afford us the breathing room that as the bids come in, we would have enough if we reach that to add 10% of our engineer's estimate once that's finalized.
So that cost estimate from May 22nd was 6.99 million. And so this 7.1, as Service Safety Director Mosley is saying, you know, allows us that. And we think this is a reasonable cost estimate from MSA. And so we're confident that the bids can bring in most of these things that, as you're saying, Councilmember McGee, you think are essential, the splash pad.
And the chlorine did drive it up, the next-gen chlorine system that we're having. But that's okay. That's what we want. And it'll recoup over
You
a
mean
number of
salt?
years, you know. It's actually...
It's a salt process that makes for chlorination. So it's not salt, it's not a salt pool, but a salt chlorination. Am I saying that right?
I think so.
Salt chlorination process.
Thank you. I believe we have a few other comments. Councilmember Pappy.
So let me just clarify. So from a lap lane perspective, if you were to use any competition, we're talking about all the lanes at one end are 4.6 to 7, or did I hear something different?
I don't believe so. We were not ever building a competition pool. As a matter of fact, during the phone conference today with the design engineers MSA, the question was brought up about night lighting. So if they're going to have activities at night, that significantly changes the regulations on lighting and increases quite a bit of lighting that will be required in the pool. So they're also crunching that number here to have that, so that we have the final numbers at the time that this is read for the third and final time and adopted.
So for a lap swimmer, if you were a tall person, 4.6 could get kind of crunchy. So when they're doing the lap lanes, all 8 may not be open.
May not, if you're talking about a competition. Even when I was there this evening, there's a walker, and we talked about allowing a walker. I know that I'm like critically challenged at 5 feet. But even if I go to the far end of the lap lanes now, it's kind of like this. I mean, I think I'm just going to be able to accommodate all users, and I think that's how we felt from the beginning, to replace the pool to meet everyone's needs as best we could.
Yeah, I don't really want to rehash. It's not for
Okay.
rehashing at this point, but some people may have thought that and some others may not have, so, all right.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Katsas.
So then just for clarification, because the email that I received was talking about the north end of the lap lanes were all one depth, 4 foot 6 inches, and then the southern ones were all 7 foot. Is that, and are you saying that the orientation is
Different.
different?
I will get that clarified.
Okay.
This week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments regarding pool ordinance? Yes, Councilmember.
I think we can do some take-home. Personally, my big thing is always process and planning. And I think that we can take some take-home messages of just because you hire a consultant doesn't mean that you're going to get stellar reaction or work. And I think that some of the early work of public participation and public process that was done by certain consultants and stuff was not up to the Athens standard. Maybe up to a standard in someplace else, but we are a very interactive community. We ask a lot of questions. We want, detailed answers. And so I think that's an important thing to take home, that if you do all your homework up front in the planning process, you don't have some of the issues that we had later in the planning, in the process.
That we
So,
continue to have.
yeah, so I'm a process nerd. Process is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Moving on to announcements and other businesses. This evening, we do have an opportunity for an appointment to our Community Relations Commission. And I do believe that Ms. Laura Olbers is here this evening. Councilmember McGee, I believe, is able to comment on this.
Actually, it's
Councilmember Katsas, thank you.
yes. Thank you, President Pro Tem Butler.
You're welcome.
So I would like to make a motion to appoint Laura Obers to the Community Relations Commission.
Second.
I was given Laura's vita here, and just flipping through it, we have an Ohio University graduate who is also an AmeriCorps person. She has worked with the Ohio Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine and also Live Healthy Appalachia. In her own personal volunteer work, she also has worked with Big Brothers Big Sisters and Echoing Meadows. So across the whole age gamut, I think that this is a great person to have on this board. And I thank this person in advance for the work that she will be doing.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the appointment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. Thank you for your volunteer work. Moving on to opportunity for, announcements in our business. Before we move on, we should acknowledge what needs we have regarding committee meetings next week.
Finance personnel.
Thank you.
Transportation.
Transportation.
Committee of the whole.
My guess is that we may have some pool questions and or city service safety issues, so let's throw that on there as well. Any other committees?
I'm not sure about about development planning.
Okay.
So, we'll see.
Okay, thank you. Yes? Special session. We're going to need to request a special session for next week, which can be done by council or the mayor. So, we're going to request.
We're requesting a special session.
Thank you for reminding us. Opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on this evening's agenda. If so desired, please feel free to approach the podium. Okay, seeing none, we will adjourn. Is there a motion for adjournment this evening?
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjourning at approximately 8:07 p.m. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. We are adjourned. Take care.